Our culture is crazy for courtrooms. There is, in fact, an entire cult of Americans addicted to the spectacle of courtrooms and what they offer, whether it is in the form of entertainment or legal resolution or the moral lessons on how we conduct our lives. Much of what passes for law as culture involves television dramas like Law and Order and Boston Legal, and even court TV, which reports on the momentous and salacious trials of the day. But then there are the little trials, unfamous and uncelebrated plaintiffs and defendants, regular people, all emotionally caught up in the smallest of claims, desperate for justice and perhaps also longing for their 15 minutes of fame. This is the world of courtrooms as TV entertainment. Real people, real disputes resolved by real judges, and yes, filmed in front of an actual audience and witnessed by a silent jury watching from home. The worst epidemic to strike General Hospital and other daytime soap operas are shows like The People's Court and Judge Alex. They are the true tragic operas of the 21st century. These court proceedings, syndicated all over America and seen by thousands of viewers every day, may have been the first cultural manifestations of reality TV. Before The Survivor and The Apprentice, there were ordinary litigants standing before a judge, pleading their own cases, grateful for their day in court and their time on TV. Let's take a look at two clips, one from The People's Court, where I think we're starting actually first with Judge Alex, and then the other from The People's Court.
She says to you, I don't want a $10,000 engagement ring. I'd rather you give me a ring and some cash.
I thought she was the love of my life. She turned out to be a liar and a con artist.
You know what? I'm not the liar, Michael. You're the liar.
Well, what's with the diamond ring? You said you give it back. You still have it on your finger.
Stop.
Okay.
Both of you stop. Okay?
I earned it.
All right. Look. You earned it?
Your Honor?
I feel like I deserve it.
You earned it. Okay. You are such a gold digger. Honestly, you should be wearing a miner's helmet.
He's begging me on the telephone, Your Honor. Here's my girlfriend's number. Call. He's crying to me on the phone. He's saying to me, that's why I can't come back. My mind is not there.
So
I don't know what I'm doing.
in order to get your contractor to get his mind on the job, call his 18-year-old girlfriend who's run off to try to get...
So like she could move back in, so like he could get back to work. This guy don't want to do nothing. All he's doing is crying on the telephone. You understand? Your Honor, I'm a gambler.
You really are a gambler.
That's right. I am not a
Mr. Milian, I could listen to you all day long. You know that?
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Judge Marilyn Milian and Judge Alex Ferrer. Thanks so much, Marilyn. Middle seat. Yeah. All right, that was a hell of a lot funnier than anything Scott Giroux said.
Well, he's only a lawyer. We have rank.
Speaking of rank, Alex, so let's be, just for those people who don't know, you're not actors playing lawyers. You actually both went to law school.
Absolutely.
And you both are judges.
I went to law school with you.
I know, but nobody admits that. I don't admit going to law school.
I'd suggest you remember that before you start telling any stories, because I have a few of my own.
So you're both actual lawyers and you're both judges. So this is important to keep in mind. And so how did you even get started doing this? In fact, you both had careers as jurists in South Florida.
We were judges together in Miami for many years.
So
That's how we know each other.
tell us how this came to you. How did this even become possible?
Well, People's Court, in its eminent wisdom, many years ago, about 7 years ago, took a look at the landscape of court TV shows. And after the U.S. Census had come out, predicting that Hispanics would be the largest minority group in America by the year, I think, 2005, they said, and it happened in 2002, thought that it might be a good idea to have the first Hispanic on a court TV show. And so they went all over the country in search of that rare and elusive species, a Latina. And one of the places they searched that was not where we're neither rare nor elusive was Miami, Florida. And my neighbor, who is not a judge but a Cuban-American lawyer, knew somebody in the production team. She flies up, she auditions. I have no idea this is going on. And as she leaves, Harvey Levin, who knows no shame, looks at her. Harvey Levin is a fellow on the street who is one of the producers of the People's Court. He's also the creative force behind TMZ.com. Harvey Levin said to her, "Do you know anybody else we should call in Miami?" To which I would have answered, "No." But of course, she, being a much better person than I am, said, "Yeah, I don't know if you're going to call me back, but you've got to call my neighbor." Wow. And she gave him my name and number. That's how I ended up.
A righteous neighbor.
Yes, she is. She's no longer my neighbor, thanks to her.
And Alex, how did this happen for you?
I was actually approached a couple of years before I ended up doing the show with 20th Television. My show is produced by 20th, which is a subsidiary of Fox. I was approached by ABC Disney and by Telepictures, which is the company that distributes Marilyn's show. And we had some discussions, and frankly, at that point, I was about 8 years into my judgeship. I loved what I was doing, and this was such a big gamble that I weighed it back and forth. We talked, but I never did the show, and they actually never did it either. So we both walked away. And I'm kind of a risk taker. So for the next 2 years, I basically kicked myself going, I should have tried it, I should have tried it. I'd spoken to Marilyn when she was approached, and we talked about the pros and cons, and I knew she was enjoying it a lot. So 2 years later, Fox decided, or 20th Television decided they wanted to do a court show. And it just so happened that the producers who were working very closely with 20th Television happened to be the ones I met 2 years earlier with ABC Disney. So they called me and said, "Would you change your mind?" And at that point, actually, my name had been submitted to the governor for a vacancy on the 3rd District Court of Appeals. And there were 3 vacancies, and I had a pretty decent shot at it. So I knew I was given a possible seat on the appellate bench. Which made it a very interesting decision, because one is, of course, the pinnacle of any judge or lawyer's career, and then the other is a spot on the appellate bench. So, no. No. The other one was entertainment, which I obviously had never done.
Let's face it, this is what everyone would want to do, and then there's the Supreme Court of the United States.
Right. And even they want to do it.
Well, that raises an interesting question. In some levels, you both did this at some risk.
Oh, yeah.
You left something that
risk.
was a conventional judicial appointment.
And now it looks like every judge on every TV show is coming straight out of Miami, Florida.
Right.
But when I did it, people thought I was nuts, you know? There was this group of people who thought, "Oh, this is so exciting." And then there was this other group of people who had absolutely no respect for my decision. Then there was this core of people who have been mentors for me for years who were just really, really worried for me. And, you know, it wasn't easy. I mean, I put a lot of thought into it, because if I gave up a gubernatorial appointment and this thing tanked, my legal career was pretty much over. I mean, I couldn't turn around and say, "Okay, do over, Governor." You know, it was going to be over. So, you know, I had to really, in the words of Don Corleone, they had to make me an offer I could not refuse. Right. You know, I'm raising 3 children. I just sort of, all right, this gamble will be worth it. If they cancel me the next day, it'll still end up being worth it. And that's sort of how it, now, of course, we've been on for 7 years, and I'm a genius. The same people who were mortified over my decision all are begging me to speak at, you know, all their functions and their charities and everything else. But
I had a slightly different angle, because she was appointed and I was elected. So I had already run through a elected campaign in Florida, which in Miami is the size of like gubernatorial campaigns in some states. I mean, we have over 2 million residents in Miami. Are we approaching 3 now or something?
Yeah,
2.5?
yeah.
It's huge.
many of them vote repeatedly.
Yeah, they do vote repeatedly. Even the dead ones vote.
Yeah.
So we had, you know, I had been through that, and I knew that if it didn't work out, I could run again. But who wants to sit around and wait for another election to come around and run again? And plus, I had been ready to make a move to maybe the appellate bench. And once you tell the governor, thanks, but I'm going to go the Judge Judy route, you know, you probably...
Is that what you said? You said the Judge Judy route? You didn't say the Judge Marilyn route?
I'm sorry. I know I'll be properly punished later. You probably have slammed that door shut. So, you know, it was a big risk.
Tell us how this works. I think many people do not realize that these are real parties, real plaintiffs and defendants, who opt out of a state court proceeding to be with you. Tell us how that works.
We call the process panning for gold. We have people assigned to courthouses throughout the country whose only job it is to sit there all day long and read every single complaint that's filed. And then they pick out the ones that are the most salacious, and pass it along to several levels of producers until they're screened telephonically, and then we decide, okay, we're flying them into New York. So it's, and what those folks do, I mean, the mechanism, and this is, it's interesting. People's Court is the granddaddy of all the shows. I mean, I'm not, but People's Court has been on for 22 years almost now. And no more, about 22 years. And the creator of our show is a genius, and he's still a part owner of the show. Warner Brothers owns half of it, and he owns half of it. But back when he was going to do it, nobody wanted to do this. They thought this was a terrible idea, and he couldn't pitch this. He pitched it to every network. Nobody wanted to do it because they thought it was an awful idea. It would make the law look terrible. And now, of course, everybody's kicking themselves. But when these cases come up to New York and we decide, okay, we're going to take them, what happens is that the parties sign an arbitration agreement. So it's binding arbitration. That's a mechanism that gets it in. And that's how, the Stu Billett, who created the show, thought, how can I do this so that it's real? And it really is the first reality TV show, well before all this other stuff happened. And, he thought to himself, okay, the way to create the drama actually in the courtroom and not just have a dramatization of this is to make it binding arbitration in the courtroom.
And have the real litigants and have a real judge. Or some of them actually aren't real judges, but for the most part, you have a real judge deciding the case. And actually, our decisions are
somebody
more,
with judicial experience, because we all resign in order to do this. But.
Absolutely. But actually, our decisions are more final than they were when we were judges, because there's no appeal. So
that's part of what they bargain away on the arbitration agreement.
But this mining for gold process, Marilyn, that you talk about, suggests that we are looking for specific kinds of plaintiffs and defendants, people that will be entertaining. Yeah. And in fact, Alex told me an anecdote, which I know is true because he never lied to me before, that in fact on the show, they'll fix your teeth.
They'll what?
Not mine.
These guys have telegenic smiles. But the plaintiffs and defendants, right, tells this part that they'll...
No, if you have, we'll get somebody...
I was laughing just like you when I heard...
We'll get somebody who has a real, I mean, I don't know if you do it, but we'll get
No!
Really? They don't?
No.
We'll get somebody who has like a really ugly gold tooth in the middle of their mouth, and they'll put like a white crown over it, so it doesn't...
Why don't you just get another litigant, rather than giving the guy dental work?
Well, sometimes they're good. If the guy's not good, we're not even considering him. But no, but like Marilyn said, you're looking for certain cases because at the end of the day, let's face it, it's entertainment.
Right.
If you get a couple of people out of Iowa, and frankly, I've got nothing against Iowa, but for purpose of example, and they are like, well, I sold him 100 widgets and he didn't pay, that channel is going to be changed so fast. You want people who have preferably a relationship of some sort, because there's always a backstory. You want friends, coworkers, neighbors, former boyfriend, girlfriend, family members, because then it's going to be more than just about the widgets, okay? And that's what makes it a little more entertaining. And at the end of the day, it's entertainment. It's entertainment. It's entertainment, real entertainment, because there are real cases, and we do render real judgments, and we do really decide their case, and hopefully we do it well. But it also has to be appealing to a viewer who wants to be entertained.
So a person who has a landlord-tenant dispute, or someone who's trying to get their jewelry returned from a relative who refuses to return it, or, for instance, a law school professor who's ridiculously underpaid and has a dispute against Bill Traynor, something like that.
I'll take that.
If that was an interesting case telegenically, you would say that's gold. Bill and we're auditioning for one. Wouldn't that be great? Let's look at another clip. This one is going to be from the People's Court.
This is not going to be good.
Okay, I got a plan. I think it's time you stop having babies because you're not equipped to bring them into the world. All right? I have only the babies that I can pay for. And more importantly, care for. Because the government's willing to help you to pay for them. They just can't make you love them. They can't make you visit them. Why did you leave your kids for weeks and weeks without seeing them at this lady's house to the point where a 6-year-old Angel has to run away from school to knock on the door he used to live on to see if he can find his mommy?
You're not listening to me.
No, you're not listening to me. Answer what I asked. Don't talk to me about forms you filled out. Don't talk to me about how hard you worked. Don't talk to me about, hey, I was living with a friend. Tell me how, because I tell you what, I'm going to a shelter with 3 kids before I let those 3 babies out of my sight. They're my babies.
But I
all right?
never
And if there's no father around to help out, they need me to be mother and father, baby. If you're going to bring them into the world, then you be mother and father for them. You don't just toss them off at a babysitter and say sayonara.
I don't know about you, but she intimidated the heck out of me. I'm leaving.
Alex and I are gone. You know the funny thing, Marilyn Milian has like the sweetest smile of all time. So it's hard to know when she's yelling at you how mad she really is.
Well, we fixed her teeth.
I still can't believe you.
I know, wasn't that great? She's
That's
going, what kind of a
that's
show
what-
does
We
that?
want them to look nice.
No, I mean, I do. I mean, you definitely how they look is very important.
Absolutely.
So I understand. I just don't know why you don't just go to another litigant. It seems so expensive.
With better teeth.
I don't know.
So why?
Actually, we like the gold tooth in the middle. That's our thing at People's Court.
Well, that's what Marilyn meant when she said mining for gold.
Yeah.
So, Marilyn, why would that person do this? Why would she go on the show?
You know-
That is humiliating. She was hammered on national television. I don't see how she can recover. She can't go into a grocery store the next day.
Because everyone watches me.
Right? Why?
You know,
Why do people
why do
opt
they do
out
it?
of a silent process?
everybody doesn't have the level of shame you have.
That's
You and I
step
have,
one.
everybody has a different sense. Some people, frankly, don't care.
Right. But you know what I think? I think, I did small claims before I was a felony judge with Alex. I did small claims for several years. I loved small claims. You know why? Because small claims is not about the money. Small claims is about the principle of the matter. And so what happens is now not only do they sue because of this principle, but now they have an opportunity. They've been invited to be on national television to prove not just in one little courtroom how wrong this person is, but to prove it in front of an entire country and many, many other countries by satellite. So I think that's one reason why they do it. Okay, then the other reason why they do it is that print that goes up too fast for you to read at the end of the show, which explains that in all of these judge shows that work the exact same way, if the plaintiff wins, the show pays the verdict. That's the second reason that they do it, because the plaintiff knows that they're not going to be chasing somebody for money, and the defendant knows that they're not going to be out any money. But now, knowing what you just found out, if you don't already know it, that the shows pay the verdict, isn't it just the bomb how pissed off they are when they walk into the hallway anyway? And do you know why? Because it's not about the money. It's about the principle. I had a guy once who sued for a $5 lottery ticket. He had bought a ticket at a particular market. He felt that the guy was disrespecting him because he was African American, and the fellow was Asian. I can't remember from where, and they had this long-standing tension in that community. And he said the guy didn't give me my ticket. So what did he do? He paid $65 to sue over the $5 lottery ticket. And I can't tell you how many cases we get like that, where you have to really control yourself from reaching into your purse and just handing over the money, because it's really important to them. This is the raw. See, I loved this. People ask me, do you miss judging? I'm like, what are you talking about? I am judging. I mean, to me, this is more raw and real than, litigating with lawyers, multi-million-dollar cases, or death penalty litigation. To me, this is so human that having these people argue about something that they both feel so right about is, to me, delicious. And then having it screened by all these producers, so it's only, the sexiest of cases. That's even better. So no, I'm not bored. I love what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I see the same thing. I see litigants who will file and spend $70 to file a $30 claim, and and then the defendant, like we said, the network pays. So you think the defendant would just roll over?
Right.
The defendants are so angry at having been sued that they know that the plaintiff's going to get money if he wins, that they fight tooth and nail. And I've had defendants walk in the hallway after I explained the law and said, you're wrong and I'm ruling for the plaintiff, walk in the hallway just furious. And the producer will say, well, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay the judgment. I don't care. I don't want that so-and-so to get a penny. I mean, they're just so passionate about it. But these are the cases that America sues over. I mean, we don't know it because, you folks don't sit in a small claims courtroom, and watch the cases. But this is what people go to small claims courts to sue about. The little things that irritate them to the point they destroy their lives.
But what's fascinating about this is that it really speaks to courtrooms as a place of dignity. In many ways, these shows undermine all of the presumptions of what courtrooms do. And in fact, they don't give you all the complaints that people normally get. There are no loopholes here. There are no lawyers here. People truly get their day in court. They might get reamed out, but they get an opportunity to speak. They're often not interrupted. There's no evidence rules. They get a chance to stand there and make their case. There are no lawyers.
Let me correct two things that you said that I think. we pride ourselves on people's court, and I've watched Alex. I watch Alex during my lunch hour, so that I can then call him and leave messages on his recorder saying, "Oh my gosh, you stink!" You know.
She's not kidding. She really does.
I do that. But we do apply the law. If there is, when you say a loophole, if there is a legal technicality that ends up resulting in a result that we don't want to apply, we do apply it. That is not true of every court show. It isn't. And there was actually a law review article written recently, sent to me by alert law student, my niece, on the differences between the People's Court and Judge Judy on this topic, written by a Canadian professor. I don't remember from what school, but in any event, we do that, and yeah, these shows are educational, but they also have to be entertainment, or you're going to end up, looking for a job again. So we do have to make it like the most interesting of cases to keep America tuned in. But I am often asked, but my husband is a judge in Miami, and it's amazing to me because knowing how many judges in TV have come from Miami, and knowing that you're sitting in the audience and my husband is sitting in the audience at the judicial conferences, how many times have certain Supreme Court justices in the state of Florida gotten up and made comments like, we have to talk about what we're going to do about these dreadful court shows and the way they portray the judiciary and are hurting us. Let me explain something to you. We are not making judges in their respective jurisdictions look bad. We are not harming the judiciary. America loves us, okay? Witness the proliferation of these judge shows. They love us. The ones they hate are the judge that delayed in their own particular case, or the person who granted the divorce and gave the wife too much or the husband too much. That's who they hate. They hate, but they don't hate us. They love us. So we're not making the judiciary look bad. And yes, you got to amp it up or you're not going to stay on television. But I think both Alex and I do a good job because I know how we did it on the bench in Miami, of applying the law.
Well, we did it a little different because I'll tell you, Marilyn is Marilyn. The way you see her on television is the way she is. There is, there's a filter there, but it's not a big mesh. It's just, it would come out, and everybody loved her for that because she would be very blunt with you on the bench.
People used to tell me, "You're going to get in trouble,"
because she would just speak her mind.
You're
like
going
that.
to get in trouble. I'm like,
Now, I didn't see that particular case, but I know that what she said, that woman had it coming. I know because I know Marilyn, and I've gone off on litigants too.
Well, let's do it. You love a moment like this. Alex, we'll come back to that. Let's watch Alex Ferrer go off on somebody.
Mr. Harris, you're suing your son for money that you loaned him after you say he abandoned you and your granddaughter in the path of Hurricane Katrina. You mean to tell me that you accepted $200 from a stranger to drive her to safety and left your dad and his granddaughter, 16-year-old girl, behind to fend for themselves?
And my mother.
And your mother. Well, you were in the dome for how long?
We were in the dome for 5 days. People were jumping off the balcony. There was no running water.
I am so at a loss for words for what you put your own family through for $200. I mean, at least Judas held out for silver.
I want to know how my people missed that case.
That was a good case.
I think that was a
great
measured
case.
response.
That was a good case.
By the way, he not only left his father, his mother, and his it wasn't his daughter, but his father's granddaughter. He also left his own child, his baby mama, and his current wife, all of them. So he was something. But we do. One of the beauties, I think, of our current position is that we get to speak our mind. As a judge, you're always taught to hold it in. You're always taught, there's the recusal coming if you start expressing opinions, and it weighs on you like a rock. And to be able to tell people what you think of what they did is very liberating. Now, of course, it has to be measured. I mean, because frankly, I would agree with the Supreme Court Justice that Marilyn is talking about. Were we doing a Jerry Springer court show? But we're not. I mean, we have limits. And I told them when they approached me, I said, I have no interest in doing that kind of a court show. If that is what you have in mind, then you picked the wrong judge. And, to their credit, 20th Television said, no, absolutely not. We want you to be you. And That's the way I do my show.
But you both don't, it's not like you cite cases, although Marilyn points out that we don't, if there is a legal loophole, we'll recognize that that's the way the law would require a
That would be
result.
lost on the litigants.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
But
well,
I'm saying we don't, again, where there are no lawyers, we don't cite the law. It does appear in a very profound way to have kind of the golden rules look, common sense, an absolute judgment handed down by people of wisdom who are not citing law, but citing a sense of morality, a sense of the distinctions between right and wrong.
There's a lot of the morality and the distinctions between right and wrong. There's a lot of law. The thing is, what we need to do if we want to entertain America is distill it. So I will not sit there and recite a statute. I will say the law requires X, Y, Z. And what I often do with the litigants, because it's lost on some litigants, it's not lost on others, because I want them to leave with a sense of, okay, I get it, even if they don't like me or agree with me. I will send, I'll have my bailiff and I'll actually sometimes say it on the air. I'm going to give you a copy of the case that, they usually edit it, but because it's boring to say. But I'll send the law with them, because at the end of the day, I do want them to feel like they got a fair shake, and it wasn't just whimsical that I did whatever I felt like doing just because there's a bunch of cameras on me. But yeah, we try to book cases that are not going to get bogged down in the minutia of comparing statutes, because that couldn't be more boring. They're going to switch the channel in a second.
Yeah, that'd be like watching paint dry.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to sit there and tune in to watch an analysis of this statute versus that statute or a discussion about a case. But I do it a little different. I don't give them the case law. I don't give them the statute or anything like that. But what I do is I'll explain to them. I'll say, you know what? If you were in Texas, you'd be right, because the law in Texas is this. But you're in Illinois, and in Illinois, this is what the law is. And I explain to them why I'm ruling, so they don't think I'm shooting from the hip. Frankly, there are others out there who do shoot from the hip. And what I mean by that is they will rule on a general principle of fairness. There's no understanding of what the law is in New York or in California or Florida or Illinois as it applies to this litigant's case. They just say, what do I think is fair? And there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. It actually would make my job a lot easier if I did it that way. I wouldn't have to spend a lot of time looking at the law that applies to the particular case I'm handling, because it's great when you're a judge in Florida. You learn Florida law, you digest it, you become an expert at it, and very few things do you have to look up. But when you're doing law as it relates to Florida and California and New York and Illinois, and you're never an expert. So you're always researching, you're always trying to stay on top of it. And I tape 8 to 10 cases a day. So imagine how many jurisdictions I have to prepare for one day's taping. So yeah, it would be a lot easier for me to do I'm just gonna do what I think is fair.
But it's wrong.
But it's wrong.
Do you guys have a lawyer on staff?
Yeah, we do, but there's
Yeah,
no way
we
he
have
can
a
pull
lawyer
my
on
weight.
staff,
You know,
too.
all the weight.
Pardon?
There's no way he can pull all the weight.
No, he can't pull barely in. Okay,
Right.
but we do. But we have a lawyer on staff. I hope he's not in the audience. We have a lawyer on staff. I'm gonna be wrong all day tomorrow. We have a lawyer on staff whose job it is to pull the cases beforehand. For example, if I have a dog bite case from a particular jurisdiction, I must know the dog bite law of that, not just that state, not just but from the county that the person lives in, for the city the person lives in. I need to know that kind of stuff. I have construction cases that have to do with zoning. I have to know that. So we actually, we pull that stuff, and then what I do is I spend an awful lot of time digesting this beforehand, so that when I go out, I'm not sitting there reading the law and explaining the law and comparing the law, because they're going to switch the channel. So when I go out there, I have distilled all this into, that's not what's required in your county, because I've just into something that the average Joe can relate to and not be bored by.
And by the way, you have to have a bigger understanding.
And I think we owe that. Can I just say one more thing? Because
you're going to anyway, so
I'm going
go
anyway.
ahead.
Seriously, because I'm really, really proud of the way that we do it on People's Court. I love the guy who created this whole genre, the guy who created my show, Stu Bell. He is so enamored of the law that he has made it his life's work to make sure that we are true to form. And what happens on our shows is that the producers who are working on it sometimes will have a tendency to want to overproduce things. And I'm not talking about capping a tooth. I'm talking about things like, well, do you have the measurements of the thing? Did you take a picture of the thing? Did you go out and get a cup? And then all of a sudden what that does, because they want it to be interesting and they want there to be, but what are you doing? You're like prompting this litigant. And we've actually just had a meeting about, no, watch out.
They bring what they
Resist
bring.
the temptation. resistant to data. Why? Because we want it to be really real and raw, because that's what's been the success of it for all this time, and really legitimate in terms of doing all of the legal research and everything else, and really making it not a gut but a legal decision.
But Marilyn, the law is all against the gut. It's against the raw.
Oh,
you
it's
guys,
not
you
really.
guys have opened up rawness and guts to the point where it bleeds all over America.
That's right,
If you go
because
to if you go to a courtroom, judges historically are opposed to emotion. They're opposed to guts. They're
Yes.
opposed to anything like that. We're going to show some more really cool, funky clips of you guys in very raw, emotional
Judges
modes.
are opposed to displaying it, not feeling it. What do you think? We didn't feel it when we saw things like that in Miami? We felt it. We just weren't. We didn't display it. But now
yeah.
I have a job. I often say I have kids who think I have no faults, a husband who married me despite my faults, and a job that pays me because of my faults. Okay? Because I am now encouraged to say everything I think, and that is very different than the way people run a regular
It would
courtroom.
be deemed unjudicial.
Yes, yes.
Unseemly, undignified.
Yes, yes.
The emotion and rawness that you mine
That's
here
right. That's
is completely rejected in
you
the
know-
conventional
but you know what,
it's awful, but-
You know why I think there's the line that I think you can't cross is I think that it's fine when the emotion is real. Sometimes I see some shows where it looks like it's manufactured. It's not real. It's being done for the effect, and that I think takes
I
it
got
totally
mad
out
all
of it.
over again watching that. But
Let's look at another clip. There's another one of Marilyn. She's
Oh,
not even
God.
white mad here. Let's see.
There's two beautiful young children behind you who this could have been just one of those bad things that happen, and then we move on, right? But it hasn't been. The greatest discovery of our generation is that we can choose how big an effect something is going to have in our lives. You can let it ruin your life, or you can move on. You're going to need to move on. You're going to need to move on from this, because these two have already been through enough. Not only have they already lost a pet, but then they see you breaking down, and they all of the horrible facts of this case get paraded in front of them over and over again.
Another look at Marilyn Milian.
Was that Old Yeller?
That was an incredible moment, I thought. I've never seen anything like that in a courtroom. The judge looked teary and weepy. She was sincerely moved.
you got to spend less time in law school and more time in a courtroom.
This is true. and the litigant, there was a true sense of connection.
Right.
There was a true sense of that you were reading him the riot act in a way that he needed to hear, and that he was able to hear in this instance. This didn't look like a guy that, even if it wasn't binding arbitration, it didn't look like he'd appeal this.
Right.
It looked like he got this.
Right.
This looked like resolution.
Right.
Unlike what we often see is the irresolvability of what we normally see in a courtroom, where people walk away seething and wanting to appeal.
But isn't that the goal of our judicial system? Resolution and changing people's behavior? Isn't that a good thing? Don't you want them to walk out and then treat their fellow man a little better because they got it, they got you, they got what you were trying to tell them? You know, America doesn't get, you touched on this earlier, America doesn't get their legal education from $350 an hour lawyers, folks. They don't. That may be what you want to be, but that's not where they get their legal advice. You know where they get it? They get it from TV. Okay? They get a lot of wrong stuff from drama. They get a lot of wrong stuff from court shows, and they get a lot of good stuff from court shows.
And I'd venture to guess that other than the law students here and perhaps the journalists, if you ask most people out there what judges they know, they couldn't tell you, which is why I've always laughed about judicial elections, because people go in there, they don't have a clue who's running or whether they're a good judge or a bad judge. It basically amounts to like...
They just see that face and they voted for it.
Yeah. That's why I don't put my face on posters. That ain't happening. They go in there and they go, oh, Rosenbaum. I went to high school with a guy named Rosenbaum. I'll vote for him. Or Fernandez, Hispanic like me. Vote for him. You know, which and you're electing people who are going to make life and death decisions, or you know, on the civil bench may cost your company or your family hundreds of thousands of dollars, even if it gets fixed on appeal a year later. But most of the people don't know. I mean, most people, if they know a judge, it's the judge who handled their divorce. Other than that, they don't know anybody. And
And
they
there's
have
not
mixed feelings
fond
about that one.
memories of that.
Right. They have real mixed feelings about that one,
But
too.
speaking of judges that people know, I know that the two of you are oftentimes called upon to be commentators on the trials of the day. And I wonder what other members of the judiciary think of that. You are now public speakers on behalf of national cases in a way that other judges would either find repugnant or feel jealous about.
I've never heard
either of
any
those.
comment about that at all.
Yeah.
In fact, when I decided to do this, one of the things that I did say to Fox was I certainly don't want to be restricted in doing anything like commentator roles or things like that, because I wanted to keep it real. I still teach. 3 weeks from now, I'm going to the Judicial College, the Florida Judicial College, to teach Florida judges. I still do that. I still stay active in it, and I want to keep that. I don't want to just kind of drift off into the entertainment arena.
But you're right. But the
I
point
don't
is that
think
when
any of
you're
my colleagues really, I don't. One thing I won't
They
do.
know we're not still judges,
Right.
you know, and we're not restricted.
But when you're
one
called
of the things
upon-
I will not do is I won't go on and criticize a sitting judge, especially a Florida sitting judge who I'm going to end up teaching the next week.
You're called upon as public
And I was asked to do
commentator.
that quite a few times in the Anna Nicole Smith case. So
But you're in a unique position. You're called upon for the reasons that you know, which is that you're public figures now. You're not just judges. You're judges that people know. You're not Fernandez and Rosenbaum. You're Ferrer and Milian, people who real people know, and news media will ask you, even though, again, the proceedings that you preside over look different in very profound
although I would
ways.
like to think that they call us because they know we're going to give them a well-reasoned opinion, and it's not just because
Entertainment.
we happen to be on TV.
Yeah.
Because
I
frankly,
mean, they have a lot to
it's a
pick
totally
from,
different audience.
you know?
Right.
The
Yeah,
people
it is
who
a totally
watch
different-
the
yeah.
people who watch Fox News and CNN are not usually watching the court shows during the daytime.
Well, I don't know. It depends on Anna Nicole Smith is on, and
That's true.
depends
That's
on
a
what the
good point.
content is.
But so it's not like they're going to get a huge carryover by bringing us on.
Another clip, Alex Ferrer.
All right. Tell me about it.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
How is the family?
Oh, they're fine.
Good. Tell them all I say hello.
And yours?
They're all fine, thank
Oh,
you.
I take it means you're married.
I am.
Okay, well, can you give me Victor's number later?
I'll try to work him in for you.
Okay, thank you.
I think Victor's married too.
Oh,
I don't like
okay.
to speak for him, but
We'll
it's
work
awfully
together.
nice of you to ask.
Well, those little details, we'll work on those later.
Okay. Okay. At least I've got a bench between us. You're on your own.
Quit while you're ahead, okay?
No,
Quit
it's
while you're
actually
ahead.
very flattering. Tell me about this problem you had.
that would be the entertainment part, not the legal part.
Many of you may know that Fordham Law School is a Jesuit university. So I don't know if I can say this, Bill. I don't know if you say this, but what the hell are you doing? I mean, you're pimping out your bailiff.
Well, she kind of cheapened the whole experience when she immediately went, well, what about Victor? Up to then, I was like, oh, this is great.
Let me ask you a question. Don't you want people reading their leases before they sign them?
I love that she asked me a question. No one ever cares what I think. Yes, I do.
Okay. Don't you want people getting things in writing?
Yes.
Don't you want people to think twice before they loan every boyfriend they ever date all their money? When they have kids that they're raising?
Well, no. I
Or
think
give,
that.
I'm sorry, give and then call it a loan later?
I would like girlfriends to lend me money for free.
But other men money.
Yes, well,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
All right, here's how we're going to get them to live a better life. By the jokes that he was making that keep the viewer tuned in. Because then at the end of that, I guarantee that at some point in that case or the case after it or the case before it, there will be a lesson about how to live your life in a little more responsible way.
I'm not even being critical. I actually thought that was an extraordinary moment of television. I think I wrote a book, one of my last books talks about the fact that judges don't function as real people. And that they never humanize the legal process. I'm not sure I would let judges to do that. I mean, he's running like J-Date over there. Match.com with Alex Ferrer. But there was something unbelievable about that talk about disarming the litigant.
And you know what? A lot of times, I will joke with the litigants. And sometimes I joke with them because it is very disarming. You see people are scared when they go in front of a judge, or they should be, but they generally are. You put them in front of a judge and a bunch of cameras and a bunch of lights, and sometimes they look like deer just standing
Caught
there
in the
like this.
headlights, it's
And you
weird.
joke with them, and it loosens them up. They joke back, and it starts to flow, and all of a sudden they're more relaxed. And also sometimes it's a great way to point out to somebody how absurd they're being. Sometimes when you just sarcastically say something, they just get it. They've been going along with this whole story and they realize it just stopped. Nobody's buying this. And so I'll joke with people. There's humor. Sometimes I get ticked off. And, you get a range of emotions.
But I mean, it does. These last two pieces of the emotion and law shows you a different look at a jurist, a different look at a judge. Very human, very emotional, very revealing. And the question is, America's watching that, and is that better for justice? Is it better for judgment? Is it better for providing lessons for society? Which goes back to the question that Marilyn asked. Why? We've already discussed why it is that people would opt out of the court system in order to be a party to the action. Why do people watch?
I think there are a bunch of reasons why people watch. I mean, I think that people, first of all, people have always been fascinated by the law. I mean, we can go back to before LA Law. I mean, but whether it's police shows, law
I like to
enforcement
start with Oedipus Rex, by the way. My students like to
Make
start
yourself
with
comfortable.
That's right. In the beginning, whether it's law enforcement shows or just shows relating to law in the courtroom or things like that, people have always been fascinated by, as you can tell by all the hits that you keep seeing brought out in different ways. And one of my favorites is Boston Legal, because it just cracks me up. And they do some amazing closing arguments that are powerful, completely improper, but powerful and fun to watch.
Mistrial.
Right. Every time I'm sitting there watching with my wife, I'm like, and it's what I teach anyway, to teach judges closing arguments, and it just sticks in my throat, but I love watching it. So people are fascinated by it, number one. Number two, I think that it gives them a nice package. It's a beginning, a middle, and an end, all wrapped up. They don't have to wait for next week's continuation of 24 or whatever it is. They get to play along. They get to wonder which way it's going to go. Do they agree with the verdict? Do they think this person's going to win or that person's going to win? You have that ultimate sense of justice, which I think everybody wants. I mean, it's in today's day and age when so many people get away with so many things, whether it's the guy who just bolted past you at 100 miles an hour on the expressway, or somebody cheating on their taxes, or somebody who was acquitted that everybody knows he's guilty. They love to tune in and watch justice done and watch a person who did wrong get called out for doing wrong.
Let me tell you historically how this stuff happened. When People's Court was created in the early 80s and Judge Wapner was the judge, it ran for 12 years with no other competition. For 12 years, there was not another court show. Then the business of syndication changed. Warner Brothers ended up buying into it. And then they just sort of decided it was a lot cheaper to run reruns than to continue to produce the show. And the show was sunset. Maybe 7 years later, a lady named Judy decided, you know what? America's had it with wishy-washy judges. We had had many big trials in this country. And regardless of whether you are happy or unhappy or indifferent about the OJ verdict, one thing that verdict did was bring home how a judge could be so enamored of his recent rock star status as to be entertaining entertainers in his chambers and working 4 hours a day. So enamored of the opportunities that the lawyers are having books, they were thinking about their book deals as opposed to staying on task, that a trial could end up taking the number of months that it ended up taking. And so she pounced at the right time with the right team of producers and created, they created it, but she became Judge Judy, okay? And my guy, Stu Billett, is sitting at home in LA saying, wait a minute, that was my idea, right? And then he ended up, so to a large extent, you and I have to thank Judy one day, he ended up saying, not so fast, that was my creation. He brought back People's Court. And so after, I think Judy was on for 2 years with no opposition, People's Court came on. And then there were 3, and then there were 4, and then there were 20.
But in the aftermath of the OJ verdict, or what you're suggesting is that people became enamored of the machinery of justice? Or
No,
that
what I'm suggesting is that America we are a fast food nation, right? We want what we want, and we want it yesterday. And what happened is that as a nation, they were ready for swift justice. I think that Judy came at the right time and capitalized on the concept of a half-hour format where you were going to see this terrible person who did this terrible thing to this other person, and they were going to get theirs, and they were going to get it before lunchtime, you know? And you were going to be able to watch the whole thing, and you were going to feel, yeah, you were going to feel good about it. And that's what her show did at the right time in history. And then, you know, that's why it proliferated, and our show came back, and all the new shows were created.
Unlike an 8-month trial with many continuances and incredible document production
and 500 sidebars.
Everybody's
and
asleep.
Right.
This is something that happens quick. It's like a McDonald's hamburger.
And that's why the format is. That's why the format is to handle small claims cases, because you have to. Well, first of all, you know, the whole. You know, pay the judgment's got to be limited in amount, but you have to have a case that you can handle in short order. You're not gonna try an antitrust violation in a 30-minute, and God knows nobody would watch it.
The whole season.
God knows nobody would watch it, but you. But you're not gonna try a complicated case in that time. You have to have the small matters that people litigate over in small claims.
Another clip.
We have a saying in Spanish, no sabes adobar la mentira. You know what that means? You don't even know how to season the lie so I can swallow it. And not even your own mother believes you on this point, okay? And then you cry about it later, okay? You know what? Please learn something from it this time. So there's not another note like this where you cry about people taking advantage. No. You hold the key to whether they take advantage of you or not. And I'm not sure that this is, quote, advantage of you. I believe he owes you money, and we're going to go over what he owes you. But is it advantage of you? I think you know that a guy living in his car who's got a dream about launching a game is a guy who's not flowing with cash at the moment. And I think that it looked good to you then, whatever arrangement, I'll be patient. And then all of a sudden, we're no longer patient when none of the money ever comes. I don't blame you for suing. I'm just saying, don't paint it out to be something more than what it is, okay?
That's why I never watch myself. Okay?
Oh, come on, they're precious, Marilyn. Not only do you not cite the law there, but you give us a Spanish anecdote, a proverb, a homespun statement of common sense. And that part, talk about humanizing the process. Here's something that I'm going to give you something in Spanish that should be universally meaningful to everyone in this room.
Once I translate it.
Once you translate it.
That's right.
What you said before about his being Hispanic, are you of the view that, I mean, the two of you are Hispanic judges. Are you of the view that ethnic judges, jurists, actually do better at this?
Oh, no. I'm of the view that the people who back us are very smart.
Yeah.
And they know who buys soap. Okay? And that's why, you know, that's what happened. What happened is they thought, hey, we can get the whole Hispanic market, let's do this. And then this worked. And then Alex came on, and then there's 2 more Hispanic judges on now. So there's 4 Hispanic judges.
But there's also 1 or 2 African-American judges? Judge Judy, I suspect, is Jewish.
3 African-American judges. And,
I'm thinking,
and there were 4 and 5. There were, no, wait, 4 African-American judges. Yeah.
Well, I'm just making, so here we go. Here's my point. No white bread judges.
Well, you know, it's our turn, man. You know? Give us a chance at the table.
Is there something about what Hispanics, African-Americans, and 1 Jewish woman are dispensing?
No, there's actually going to be another white Jewish male launching now in September.
There you go.
Maybe 2.
And maybe 2.
Right.
Maybe
Is that right?
2.
So you're talking about ethnic Americans dispensing moral advice, legal advice, common sense, reading people the Riot Act in a way that doesn't necessarily look conventional in their use of judicial power, and yet at the same time, maybe there is something about this that has a kind of populist look to judicial lawmaking.
I don't think that the executives are looking around going, let's avoid white people, they're boring, or anything like that.
No.
Or that we wouldn't listen to them.
I think the focus is, as far as Hispanics are concerned, I think the focus was appropriately, because it's a business, the largest growing demographic in the United States is Hispanic. I wonder if we could capitalize on that.
I don't care if you're wearing fruit on your head. If you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to stay on the air.
Absolutely.
That may get you in the door, but you're not going to stay on the air.
And honestly,
and I got to tell you, when I auditioned, Alex knows this story.
No, just grab my hand when you're going to cut me off. So
It works every time. When I auditioned, and I started to get invested in this thing, and my husband and I were walking around the house like pinching ourselves, like, can you believe this could really be happening?
Oh, tell them about the phone call.
Yeah.
Oh,
I am.
Well, that was worth interrupting.
That's what happens when you know each other for too long. the head of Warner Brothers was shown my audition tape. And he called, and the guys on People's Court, we all fell in love. It was a love fest. But then they showed the tape to the head of Warner Brothers, and he said to him, "No, she's not Hispanic enough." And Harvey Levin, who sounded like his puppy had been run over at the time, right, calls me up, totally dejected, and explains this to me. And he said, but we talked them into a second audition. So we're going to do it with an audience this time and all the bells and whistles. And he goes, and I want you to go out there and get this fabulous Latina look. Okay, Harvey, I am Latina, and I don't know what you're talking about. So we sit there, and after like 10 minutes, this is funny because we sit there for like, he goes, oh, okay, I get it. Red nails, dark hair. Why don't you just tell me what, the head of Warner Bros. Had a house in Malibu, and that's where they showed him the tape, and I was so mad. I said, why don't you tell me what Malibu Ken's maid is so that I can figure out what he thinks Latinas look like? Because this is how we look, pal. We come in all shapes, colors, and sizes, okay? So, all right, brown hair, red nails, hoops. I'm in.
The attitude's kind of unique, but that's the way they look.
So the next day, I am sent by People's Court to dye my hair dark, which, by the way, I don't mean to kid you, I wouldn't recognize my own hair color if it bit me, so I didn't care. But it was the third color I was going to have that month. And when they dye my hair brown, I get a phone call from Harvey Levin at the salon, who I don't even know how he's stalking me and tracks me there. I have no idea. I'm like, how do you even know I'm here? He goes, well, your husband told me. What are you doing? I said, I'm dyeing my hair. He goes, oh my God, abort. Because now they decided they wanted a fiery redheaded Latina, because you know how we're all redheads, Latinas, right? A fiery redheaded Latina. Well, the end result of the dye job was my hair was purple. So it was a Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I called my good friend Alex Ferrer, and I said to him, dude, I am so not going to work, okay? You need to cover my calendar, and I got to go take care of this hair thing, and you did. You covered my calendar that Wednesday. Oh.
See, I was thinking of the other phone call where you said to your husband, they don't think I look Hispanic enough, and he had a great comeback.
Right. He said, actually what would happen was when we were sort of dejected about it and I was walking around the house, can you believe it? My husband would walk behind me and said, have they taken a good look at you from behind? I think you look plenty Latina. I don't want to say, because all of you guys are going to have to exit the room first.
Let's do another clip.
Ms. Robertson, you say the defendant, Mr. Acey, is a con man who conned you out of over $3,000 and you want your money back. Is that right?
Yes. He called me up and told me that somebody had stolen his checkbook, and he needed $3,200 to pay for the bad checks and a lawyer by Friday because he had a warrant out for his arrest and he'd be arrested on Friday.
Is that the only time you've ever been arrested?
No, sir.
What were you arrested for before?
A bad check.
Bad check?
I have a copy of his credit report, 31 pages of bad checks, if you're interested in seeing. 31 pages.
Are you denying that?
No.
Okay, so you have like 31 pages of bad checks on your credit report?
It could have been from when I was 16, yes, sir.
Since you were 16, you've been passing bad checks? I wish we had one of these people here.
Here
What
to
is
tell
your
you,
name?
my name is Marty Jones.
And how do you know him?
His sister lives next door to me. I met him about 1.5 years ago. He is a con man. He's a liar.
What did he con you out of?
He's conned me out of almost $30,000.
Wouldn't it be great if life were like that? Oh, Dean Trander, I have people who think I'm underpaid. Here.
That's right.
I just happen to know people. They're coming up. This is terrific. This could never happen in a courtroom, right? There's no witness list. You don't have anybody know in advance.
There's no discovery. So
there's somebody, oh my God, who's here?
Reality is that part of it is a total ambush because they don't have discovery. They don't take depositions, they don't have interrogatories or anything you would typically have. But, I don't have a problem with that. Because frankly, you shouldn't be up there trying to spin your story based on what you know they know. You should be up there telling the truth. And if you start thinking they don't know this and they do, it's going to come and bite you in the butt, which is what it should do.
But due process, procedural regularity.
But there are lots of
There's no requirement for discovery. Just go check federal court.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a right to depositions. I mean, this is created, and
it looks scripted, and yet it's real.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that woman, in fact, had been defrauded as well.
Yes, she absolutely had.
Right.
He took her for $30,000. He took the other one for I forgot how much. It was less than the 30. There was another thing outstanding on him. I don't remember because I don't know how many cases you've tried, but they all start to blend at a certain point. But this woman happened to find one of the prior victims, tracked her down and brought her as a witness.
Now, let me ask you a question.
How did that, I'm just sorry, Marilyn, one second. And how did that happen? The producer said it would be really great if Alex were to have someone who could...
No. That's same as Marilyn says. We don't prompt them to do that.
It just so happened she brought a witness.
This lady was setting up her case for trial.
Oh, wow.
I mean, remember, this case was a court case in New York.
So she strategically did this.
She looked in his credit report. She did a background check on him and found some prior accusations and stuff and started tracking things down. And I don't remember how she ran across this lady, but she ran across her and said, will you be my witness, and listed her as a witness in her proceeding. And then
so
when
you said, I wish we had one of these people here, you knew that there was one of these people
absolutely.
here.
No, that was
That's
edited.
Because you're good television.
That
okay?
was edited like that because I just kind of played into it, and it was
Right.
like, I kind of played into that part just to add a little drama
Right,
and
right.
laugh, because everybody did laugh when I said, oh, wait, you do have someone here. And the lady came out and just outed the guy completely. But that was clipped there, so you didn't see that part. But yeah, I knew that
But that's
she had
good.
this
That's
witness.
how you keep them
Absolutely.
watching.
But Marilyn's right. It's extremely entertaining. It's, in fact, the judge who asks the question, wow, wouldn't it be great if someone else could testify to that? Oh, wow, there is somebody. Let's satisfy the judge. He wants it. Let's give him.
That's Alex's motto.
Yeah.
Are there any cases you wouldn't take?
I don't know how you guys do, but I assume you do it the same way we do. We don't have any say in that whatsoever.
I never see it. I see the litigants for the first time when I walk in the courtroom, and I see them for the last time when I walk
We
out.
handle this the same as a real small claims case, as a traditional in our county small claims case, where we get a complaint, we get an answer, and we get the documentary evidence that either side thinks of giving you before the trial. And then you get a ream this big just as you're walking in, just like in small claims court back home, where all of a sudden they got their ducks in a row and all their act together, and they expect you to read something like this right before you're walking in. It works exactly the same way. So we don't pick them, and yet you want to keep it that way because then it's not very real if you have anything to do with the production aspect beforehand.
I think Alex was the one that said, well, you certainly couldn't do this with a complex antitrust proceeding case. Right. But yet, are you of the view that if we took this beyond the small claims arena, that this would work equally well?
I don't know that the formula would work, because the whole thing about this formula is it's compact. The people can get the whole thing in one sitting. They get the whole package. The judgment is paid for them, so they get the appeal of that they don't have to, because frankly, a lot of these people, if I get a judgment against one of these individuals, I'm going to be chasing them for $10 a month for the rest of my life to get it paid off. And that's what really appeals to them is, wait a minute. And then, of course, there's also your day in court thing. But those feelings and those emotions, those passions really come from these type of cases that are so personal to them. If you had a complex contract case, the emotion's not there.
Do you agree with that, Marilyn? Because I actually don't agree with that. I think there's emotion in all these cases. It's just that we're seeing them here very, as you say, raw. But I think most cases have some emotional component. I'm wondering whether you're of the view that, both of you, I think that these shows are relevant. But they mean something. People learn something from them.
But I think the emotional component you're talking about is people are emotional about the fact they're losing money. These people are emotional about the money, but they're also emotional about having been wronged. The CEO of UPS doesn't really take the baggage home with him. He's just angry that he lost $5 million on whatever deal it was, and that's a different emotion.
I don't think that you can import into TV land these more complex, high-stakes litigation just because it won't work. The people at home cannot identify with a $300,000 lawsuit, but they sure as heck can identify with a bad perm, and they can identify with a dog bite, and they can identify with a contractor who leaves them with bad work, and they now have a leak in their home, and their lives have been turned upside down. They can identify with those things. I do think, however, that we can export some of the humanity that makes these shows so appealing into a lot of our big litigation in our courthouses throughout the country. Because if judges made more sense to people, I think we'd affect more behavior out there.
But I think judges also do not relate well to people because of the boxes that they're constrained in. They are put up in that position. They have to look a certain way. They have to act a certain way. They have to not speak their mind. They have to not call people out when they think they're lying. And that kind of dehumanizes them.
Well, I mean, you know, there's good reasons for all the restraints that you have, but that doesn't mean you can't make sense to them. I think that a lot of judges hide behind the fear that they don't want to say something that's going to get them in trouble, and what they do is they lack the human element of communicating with the person in front of them in a way that will either, you know, look, the only thing you want as a judge, if you're a good judge, is you want the two people who leave. They may not like you, they may not be happy, but for the love of God, let them understand. Let them see why it is that you ruled the way you ruled, and let them think that there is some sense in the law and that it's not all arbitrary and capricious. And so the trick to that is to communicate. And so if all you're going to do is listen, listen, rule, listen, listen, rule, then that's going to explain a lot of why it is that the public mistrusts our judiciary.
Oh my God, I love what the two of them just said. I hope you were all listening. The last few minutes was just precious, and I'm glad that we have a transcript of that. It'll be on our blog and online, Live Online. Let's do one more clip, and then we'll do the question and answer moment as well.
This must be you.
Yes.
A lot of defendants tell me, Judge, the devil made me do it. I never heard anybody say, Judge, God made me do it. So this should be interesting. Let's hear your case.
They were paid $170 for 3 of the events. And unfortunately, we issued a check for $7,100.
I presented the check to her. She saw the check. She looked at the check. She said it's correct.
Let me hear about this blessing. How did you come to feel that you were entitled to keep $7,100 that you knew was not your pay?
I look at it and it's $7,100. Immediately I go into prayer. I'm thinking, Lord, I'm going to take this check.
That's just great, Your Honor, but you think I don't have a blessing from the Lord too? But he hadn't blessed me with $7,100, thank you.
How do I know, all kidding aside, how do I know that you were being instructed by God to cash this check and you weren't it wasn't just you thinking, man, $7,100 would come in really handy right now, and hey, it's their mistake, and I'll just cash it, pay all my bills, and tell everybody that God told me to do it?
Well, I guess you'll just have to trust my word on that. But the thing is,
trust your word on it. Do you know how many people out there would come to court and go, yeah, I put a bullet in his head, but God told me to do it. You're just going to have to trust me on that.
It is an absurd defense, but Alex, had she convinced you that in fact God was speaking to her, would that have made a difference?
No.
Okay. No. All right, let's take some questions from the audience. Yes?
I work in the court Judge Judy came from, and I have to tell you that based on reputation, she was more of herself in the courtroom than she is on TV. So I don't think she's doing that for TV purposes. I have 2 questions for you. One, I understand that the litigants put themselves in this position. They know what they're getting into. But even in some of the clips that you showed, their children are sitting in the courtroom. And I'm just wondering whether there are cases you wouldn't take because they're discussing custodial issues and you're worried about embarrassing the children who are not opting into this.
Right.
That's one thing. And the other thing is in my court, people come into our courtroom and think that they can argue. We're a poor person's court and family court, and they don't have lawyers. And they think based on watching your programs that they can discuss their cases with us the way they discuss them with you. And it actually makes things very complicated.
Okay, I don't know that the people who are litigating in your courtroom and defending themselves on whatever cases they have are talking, you know, saying what they're saying as a result of watching TV. I think they're saying what they're saying because they want to say it. So I think it's really going to be up to your courthouse to, you know, set the parameters for you, just like we set the parameters for us. What was your first question?
About the children.
About the children.
Yeah.
There are cases where I will not allow the children to be in the courtroom, depending on the content. That was the case that you saw, the kids that were sitting behind him. It was a case where the pet had been mauled by the neighbor's dog. And we did, you know, actually, that dog survived, actually. But I ended up leaving, you know, the children in the courtroom because this is something they had heard a bunch of other times. But there have been moments where I have made the children exit the court. There was one case that we had where the fight going on between the aunt and the mom was so intense that I called up the child, I brought her sidebar, and it had nothing to do with the cameras. And I whispered in her ear, this is a grown-up thing. And this has nothing to do with you, and don't worry, I'm going to fix this, and you don't need to fix this between them, because they had really used her as a pawn. So the cases that I think are hardest for us to handle are the cases that involve kids. If you watch my show on a daily basis, which I'm not suggesting that you do, because I can tell that you don't by the fact that you told me about your job, but if you do, unless you're TiVoing me and watching me every day, then you know that we try very hard not to injure the children for sport or television. Because, you know, we have connected brain cells, and we're human, and we have hearts. We don't exploit the children.
Yeah, and I think also in our background, I mean, I'm sure Marilyn would agree, the hardest cases I ever handled as a criminal court judge in Miami were cases involving children. You know, they just rip at your emotions. What I do typically is children come in the courtroom as delayed witnesses, and then I hear their testimony, I talk to them, and then I send them out. And I don't keep them in there. Although if they were older, if they were old enough, if they were 16, you know, I'd probably keep them in as long as this, you know, was not, you know, a lot of sexual talk or anything like that. If the case wasn't involving anything about sex, but normally I bring the kids in, hear their testimony, and let them out because I just don't want them there because I know that litigants can say the strangest things. Sometimes one of the hardest things about us handling these cases, I think, is you go in there thinking you know what they're gonna talk about, what they're gonna say, what the issues are, because you have a complaint and answer, and they totally change gears on you and give you something totally different. And you've been researching the law in Texas on this issue, and all of a sudden they're talking about that issue. And we don't have the liberty of, oh, I think we'll continue this till next week. Brief me on the issue, you know, for next week. So that's probably one of the hardest things. So I try to keep the kids out whenever possible.
Anyone else?
And then sometimes it's a construction case, and who cares?
Right.
Let's see. Emily, is that you? This is actually the Honorable Emily Goodman, who is I have a surprise guest. Look. Wouldn't it be great if we had a state court judge here? And no, there happens to be a state court judge. The Honorable Emily Goodman. Isn't it great when life is just like that?
And doesn't it feel good when you do that and it happens?
Yeah. Hey, Alex, are you married?
Yes. Thank you.
That's not my question.
No?
In fact, my question isn't really a question, Thane. If it's all right, I'd like to make a comment. And I would begin by saying that when I occasionally have to go and speak at a public school, which judges do from time to time, and you talk to these kids and tell them about your job and about the law and so on, and what they want to know at the end is, you're a judge, what channel are you on?
Oh, goodness.
And
these are what age?
Public school.
What age?
What age?
I guess they could be up to maybe 11, 12. Yeah.
How are they watching?
I know.
Well,
you guys don't watch, right?
Okay. But the thing is, and this is no reflection on the guests, but it seems to me that this blurring of entertainment and law, which is pretty much the subject of the evening, rather than being a form of legal education, to me appears to be part of the dumbing down of the American public. I have to say that. And unlike, say, Steve Colbert and Jon Stewart, who are, some might say, blurring the lines between entertainment and journalism, that is satire. And everybody who watches it knows that it is satire. And it is delivering a certain point, and which I happen to think is more educational. So the shows are popular. I haven't seen them, I have to say, except for
Oh, you're being awfully critical of a show you haven't watched.
No, because I'm in court when you're
no,
on.
Believe me, I like to say I'm a hit with the unemployed because all my friends work and they don't get to watch the show. So I certainly understand that.
But I get the idea, and I've seen, and so that is my comment. I think that it is, as I said, dumbing down America, not really teaching people, and this idea of giving people a chance to feel good. The whole feel-good thing, to me, is not really sufficient.
Well, respectfully, Judge, I would disagree. I think that you probably should TiVo them and watch them to see if you have the same opinion after you've seen them, because I don't know how you could judge it without seeing it. But I'll tell you that I even see people...
I have seen what I've seen.
Well, yeah, these are isolated clips that were sent by my producer.
But they were chosen as representative. I'm sure they're not just...
Yeah, they were. I'm sure they were chosen because they were asked to send a different variety of emotions that occur in the courtroom. Okay, so they were select moments. It doesn't mean that every case has something like this in it. But I will tell you that I've seen litigants come to court more prepared to prove their case because they tell us they say, I've watched the show and I've seen that you better not loan somebody money without signing a promissory note. So I have this. I've watched the show and I've seen that these text messages that this jerk sent me on my phone, and now he's denying that he ever did it. would be good evidence in court, so I brought this. And people learn about how they're going to be taken in life, how other people have been taken, and how to protect themselves, and how to prove their case. And I don't really think it's a dumbing down of America. I think, if anything, a lot of them are learning a lot about the law and about people who are going to take advantage of them, because it happens every day.
Well, I hope you're right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Marilyn, do you have a response as well?
I just wanted to add this. Before I became the judge on People's Court, I had the exact same opinion that you have. And
it's important for the audience to know that you were a state court judge in Miami.
I was a
and
state
the
court
Honorable
judge.
Emily Goodman is a state court judge in New York. So they were starting off in the same position.
And I realized something doing this for the last 7 years. And what I realize is that there's an awful lot of people out there that you, Judge, will never get to teach anything to. But I will. And that I have a responsibility with that. And I realize that you may look at those clips and think, oh my gosh, what a lack of decorum. But I got to tell you, I get thousands and thousands of emails a week that tell me, thank you, because thanks to you, I got it in writing, I read the contract, I, did whatever differently. So I know that we're educating them. When you talk about the dumbing down of America, that's something that I often reflect on. But that is what popular culture is to people who don't really live in the popular culture. As jurists, we're in our little ivory tower in there. And we deal with, these lawyers and, our arguments come in through lawyers, not through the people. So we live in our parameters. And so when we look at judge shows, we say to ourselves, oh my gosh, that's dreadful. And, because we live in a different world. There's a whole big world out there that's not you and I. And they don't get their legal advice on how to live their daily lives from you. They get them from television. So you can choose to wipe all these things off the face of the earth because they're a lack of decorum, or you can choose that all those people who keep sending us all those emails, who's in their perhaps to other people's simple lives, they now didn't get in trouble. There's a value to that to them. Okay? And that's why I think that we do provide a service.
Wait. Oh, do you want to have one? I think let's give the judge one retort. Do you have a comment? Do you want to respond to that, or? Yes. Oh, okay. I'm getting the sense the Thane Rosenbaum show is going to get heated. I might get this syndicated. Come on, Emily, nail her. I'll hold her down. Come on, she's tough.
It still gets back to this blurring. When people come into court and they think it is going to be law and order. In the old days, people say, well, it's going to be Perry Mason and there's going to be a mystery witness showing up. Nobody says Perry Mason anymore because nobody really
that
knows
dates
who Perry
us.
Mason is.
That dates you and I.
Right, so it's been updated a little. But I think that when people watch Law and Order or other law shows on television, they know it's a script, it's a story, but even that influences what they expect in court.
Right.
Jurors will say, well, on Law and Order, they said this, they said that, they said the other thing. And while I think that those shows are very valuable in terms of educating people, or not educating as much as exposing them to the legal scenario, I don't think that they have the same effect as your shows.
I would agree with you to a certain extent. For example, CSI.
CSI has done more to ruin the conviction rate of prosecutors in this country.
I'm holding your hand now because I'm going to finish my thought here.
And people want DNA on a DUI.
I would try a criminal prosecution, okay? And the jurors walk in there with this expectation that the cops are going to show us how they waved the wand on the wall and all this evidence came out and it's clearly him. And so all of a sudden it becomes very easy for defense lawyers to stand up and say, well, where's the evidence? Where are the fingerprints? Yeah, we have these two people saying they saw him commit the crime, but where are the fingerprints? Where's the DNA? And it's not just a matter of, it'd be great if we had this evidence, which is always an argument that was available to any defense lawyer. Wow, we'd really know for sure. But now jurors come in thinking from CSI, that's the way it is. you wave the wand and here's all this evidence. And if the person's there, there's DNA all over the place. Just pick and choose which one you want to take. And I've just seen criminal defendants that were clearly guilty walk over and over and over again because of the expectation the jurors had. Now, how can we fix that? Well, I guess we can take CSI off the air. We could probably take Boston Legal off the air because, all that joking that goes around and everything that happens in that courtroom is so bizarre and the judge is, is kind of a wacko. Or we can just accept the fact that, people hopefully can be persuaded very quickly when they come to courtroom and start saying, let me tell you, no. That's not the way it happens here. That's the way it happens on TV. Here, you will do it like this. And there's nothing like contempt power to really hammer that point home, which you have, and unfortunately I don't. So I don't think that this is destroying the American judicial system or that it is in any way negatively affecting it. I think that people can be corrected in their misperceptions if they come to court thinking that they're going to behave differently. I don't think it's a big deal. I think the positive, the plus is
We're going to take some more questions, although it's interesting. One of the things that didn't come out here with Judge Goodman and our judges here is the distinction between what is purportedly, which is real, a real proceeding, which are what you do, as opposed to these fictional.
I think you're wrong, though, that the viewers look at CSI and say, that's just entertainment.
No, absolutely.
They absolutely do not.
Absolutely
I mean, we know that because we see it in
Yeah,
court every
we see
day
it
with the
during voir
juries.
dire. We'd see it during
voir
voir
dire
dire
with the juries.
The prosecutors would get up and try to head that thing off and ask people, are they expecting to see the kind of evidence? Do anybody here watch CSI? Yes. Okay. Anybody expecting that kind of evidence? And
Let me go over here and then maybe over here. Yes, you. Yes.
Thank you. Judges, I wanted to ask you a question about your status as minority attorneys. And myself being a minority, one of my major influences growing up was Judge Wapner on People's Court. He was actually the only judge that obviously I felt like I knew at the time, and I put knew in quotes. What impact does your status as minorities have on the operation of your programs? And do you, I guess, acknowledge that you're role models for a lot of children out there who are watching your programs after school or in summers?
I don't think this is appropriate programming for children. And, at my house, we watch the Disney Channel, and I don't think that's appropriate programming for children. All right, so I don't, when I bring my kids on the set, I look to see before I bring them out which cases they can attend, and I ban them from the others. So I don't, but in terms of, there are a lot of teenagers who watch a show, and I do get a lot of, and that was something I wasn't prepared for when I started. How does it affect me on the show? I am who I am, okay? And so I am the daughter of Cuban immigrants. I am the granddaughter of my grandma who used to say all these, witticisms, and I sometimes share them in Spanish and then immediately translate them and stuff. That's the only way it affects it is how it affects who I am. I don't amp my Hispanic nature up or anything like that. That's just who I am. But when they told me to be prepared for how the role model part of things, I don't think I was prepared for it. And that has been one of the most gratifying parts of this job, is the number of emails that we get from young Hispanic women and men, actually, who were emailing saying things like, I'm so proud of you, and I'd like to do the same thing one day, and that kind of thing. It's been great. And we do a lot of public service stuff for Hispanic groups and that kind of thing.
I think it's the same for me. I get a lot of letters of support and people who come up to me who are Hispanic who say, well, I think it's great to see a Hispanic judge in this position. And then frankly, they did when I was a circuit court judge as well. So I think that, we like to look up to people who we can relate to and aspire to be as successful as them. So that part is very positive. As far as just the general Hispanic side of it, I'm not one of those I would call a rancid Hispanic, where I have that thick accent and that sometimes, people get turned off by, So I kind of blend in is what happens with me. I'm Hispanic. I was born in Cuba. I'm fluent in Spanish, but I am not out there quoting Spanish phrases because that's not my nature. When I started doing this, they did ask me, hey, how about throwing in some sayings?
How about wearing some hoops?
Would you mind dyeing your hair red? They said, you're Hispanic. I'm sure your mother used a lot of phrases around you. Maybe you could throw one in once in a while. And I said, no, not so much. First of all, that wasn't the way I was raised with a lot of sayings, and Marilyn was. And secondly, I'm not going to pretend to be somebody I'm not just to give you the Hispanic poster boy image you want. I'm going to be me. And they're perfectly happy with that.
One last question.
First of all, thank you for this very enlightening evening. Professor Rosenbaum for moderating. My question is, Professor, you wrote a book called The Myth of Moral Justice, and of course in determining the outcome of a case, the law has to be the arbiter, and from it is how you decide. But my question is, how much of the cases you decide are the decisions tempered by the morality, which we have in our society? And secondly, notwithstanding the fact that you mentioned that you enjoy presiding over these types of cases because you're able to experience, people's raw and base feelings, but don't you miss some intellectual dimension and aspect there is, which is in the law, which I'm sure attracted you in the first place to it?
There are some things I miss. there are some things I do miss. I spent 9 out of my 10 years on the criminal court bench. I started out as a police officer at a very young age. I was 19 years old when I became a cop. When I became a lawyer, I missed police work because I missed the personal gratification that I received from doing the right thing. And that's what I always felt I was doing when I was a police officer. As a lawyer, no matter how much you love your clients, and I had wonderful clients, they were really great to work with, you're still always somebody's hired gun. You're fighting for them, not for, whatever is right. You're fighting for them. And hopefully they can see that what's right is here and tell you, all right, let's take it there. But I never got the same satisfaction I did out of being a police officer. And that's what led me to be a judge. I always said to myself, I want to get that personal gratification back. And being a judge, frankly, is the best job I've ever had. I mean, I love, being neutral. I love trying to be fair, coming to work and trying to do the right thing. Of course, constrained by that pesky thing we call the law, but always trying to do the right thing. I miss the criminal cases, I think, the most, because in those cases, you always had a deeper sense of justice. There were, as a circuit judge in Florida, you're handling all the felonies, rape, murder, robbery, kidnapping. These are serious cases where people were seriously hurt. And handling those cases, if somebody is not guilty and they get acquitted, you feel good about that. If somebody is guilty and they get convicted, you feel good about that, that this person's not going to be hurting somebody else. And that satisfaction is something that I don't get at the same level here. But I still get a tremendous amount of satisfaction because if you look at these people, the passion they have for their case, I mean, we laugh. I heard people chuckle when we realized that Marilyn was talking about the emotion in a dog case. But you see people in there and they're like...
If it's your dog.
Yeah, they're ready to bawl their eyes out. And they have such passion for their cases, and you're still doing the same thing. I would say that's probably what I miss more is the criminal cases, the intellectual challenges of some of the issues there, and in some of the more complex civil cases. But in many other respects, I love what I do now more.
Marilyn?
I don't miss it at all. I'm going to tell you why I don't miss it at all. Because I am intellectually stimulated. Even though there may be a lot of people in this room who think that it is not intellectually stimulating, that these topics are boring or that these topics are mundane or that these topics... I am intellectually stimulated by the process of trying to figure out who is lying to me. I am intellectually stimulated by putting together the testimony and then comparing it to all of the evidence. Because if you think there's reams of evidence in a commercial case, wait till you see what these folks hand up. Okay, and you have to sift through all of this.
Yeah,
stuff.
they don't explain.
So they don't explain. And there's no lawyer to digest it and argue it. You have to figure all this stuff out.
You don't find them all typically the same types
I
of
do
cases?
not. I do not. But I have to tell you something. I was a prosecutor under Janet Reno litigating death penalty litigation. Okay, that's what I did. For 10 years, I did the highest, most high-pressed cases in Miami, Florida. And then I became a county court judge doing small claims. And I was asked the same question then that you're asking. It's a fair question, but I was asked the exact same question you're asking me now. Geez, Marilyn, don't you miss it? Don't you miss the intellectual? Don't you miss? Maybe I just feel a bigger connection to that whole big world out there of people who are not lawyers, because I find that so intellectually stimulating to try to get to the bottom of who did what to whom and to try to figure out, exactly what is owed and how to piece their broken lives together. I find that to be a much greater challenge than handling, correct me if I'm wrong, hundreds of burglary cases in one Monday afternoon. I think, can I just ask you what your background is? You're a law student?
Pre-law.
Okay, pre-law, okay. Here's what you got to do.
Quit now.
Yeah. No.
Quit now.
Run. Don't walk
But
to
what
the nearest
attracted me
exit.
to it is that there's an art to it, meaning when you write these briefs, some of them are just crafted so
Yeah.
well, and there's something you definitely derive.
Let
out
me
of
tell
reading
you,
it.
and I think that our judge back there can back me up on this, that most of what happens in court is deadly mundane. Okay?
No,
It
of
is
course.
deadly mundane. And when you're in criminal court, the way Alex and I were, you are like Lucy in the candy factory. And the candy just keeps coming, and you can't stem the tide, and you're just trying to manage this. It's not that intellectual. Then you get a trial, and that's intellectually stimulating. But 97% plead out.
Yeah, plead
and
out.
so, I think that what I do now is so much more scintillating, but I am scintillated by the human perspective.
And the other
I feel like the person who lives in a trailer park really needs to have their life straightened out, and I need to touch them just as much as the lawyers in a commercial case. I think that that is real, and I think that that is valuable from a societal perspective.
And the flip side to what I said before about the fact that I do miss criminal cases, the flip side to that is you get to the point when you're handling criminal cases in a high-pressure environment and the serious case. I mean, I think I had the longest criminal prosecution in Miami's history, which is Paramount bought the rights to do a movie out of it because it's so bizarre.
Okay, watch out. We got 2 kids.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to go into details about it. It was just a very violent and very long-term case. But day in and day out of this horrendous crime and that horrendous crime and who did it to this person, who did it to that person, they become like layers of paint on you. I mean, they take their toll. And I remember very much wanting out. I still miss the work, but it does have a negative effect on you as well.
Superb question. I am so sorry. The night, unfortunately, is coming to an end. You know this is a fascinating conversation. And in fact, the audience, I think, was truly getting into it. I'm sure there were many more people that would have had interesting things to contribute. I want to thank, as always, Time Warner, Heather Shaw, and Giovanna Paiano, who are our Time Warner angels. And I'm very grateful for your ongoing support of the Forum on Law, Culture, and Society. Heather, I'm sure you and Giovanna are here. I want to, of course, also thank, of course, Maura Williams and my true angel, Helen Herman, who is the executive producer of the Forum on Law, Culture, and Society. I want to acknowledge, because he's graduating and he'll kill me if I don't, James Pizer, who's sitting right there. James was the person who ran our blog this year. We have a whole new crew of people doing that, James. We're most grateful, and go off into the world and make us proud. All of you, thank you. Remember, the conversation continues on our blog and online, fordhamlawandculture.org. We have a blog. Please comment. Go home tonight. Tell us what you thought. Post something. I'll write something tonight. We've got photographs about all of our prior events and forthcoming events. The Film Festival, October 19th to the 25th. There'll be all kinds of information about the films. There'll also be FordhamFilmFestival.org. That's another website that we have. And of course, I want to thank our esteemed jurists, Judge Marilyn Milian and Judge Alex Ferrer. Thank you all. Good night.